right, welcome to another episode of this Old Jug. I'm your host, DJ Parker. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking out my channel. Tonight we have a very special guest. This here Old Jug. This is I guesstimate to be a 1830s Ohio Valley salt glazed stoneware 3-gallon jug. Look at this thing. This is awesome. There's some history we'll talk about. There's some mystery. There's a personal story of this thing. We'll talk about some value, why it was made, who made it, where, why, when, all that. So stick around and you'll walk away with all that information. So let's talk about what this is first. This is a gorgeous, primitive, rustic. Look at this thing. Let's just absorb this thing. Primitive, rustic, utilitarian vessel. Look at this. 3 gallons. How do I know? Number 3, all fancy and old-timey. I guesstimate this to be, again, 1830, maybe 1825. Made in Ohio, from Ohio clay. It's got a hand-tooled lip, meaning a person made this. They compressed the clay and shaped it. And you can see there's probably like a fingerprint from the artisan that stuck the handle on back in the 1830s. So 3 gallon is a really collectible size. It's just a real prominent, displays great. You could put a sunflower in this thing. You could put weeds in this thing and it'll look awesome. Primitive to the bone. It looks, this thing, so first of all, this was a gift to me from my mother. So thanks, Mom. This has a story. So my parents bought a house in Northeast Ohio like in 1984, and this came with the house, and it was sitting on the fireplace, on this brick fireplace, and it had it may have been the original corn cob cork, but that's long gone, or it could be in there. I think it's gone. Anyhow, so I grew up as a child, as a 4-year-old, till I left the house when I was 18. What is that? 14 years. This was in my peripheral vision. It was always like in the living room when you're watching cartoons or whatever. So this was a part of my life, and it may be one of those reasons why I'm addicted to antiques as an adult. This just has so many unique attributes and little, look at this. Looks like Europa, a moon of that Jupiter. Look at this thing. It's got all these imperfections. There's no maker's mark, which adds to the mystery. I think it makes it a little bit more fun and intriguing to collect things that don't have maker's marks, because you gotta do your research more, right? This is thick. It's heavy. It weighs, 9 pounds. Utilitarian. What other adjectives can I throw at this thing? It's bulbous. It's oval shape, right? It was designed like this for transport in a horse and buggy in days of old. And also 3 gallons was, not only is it collectible and more valuable, more sought after than smaller sizes, it was also a good utilitarian size, because it's about as big as you can get before it becomes, just too heavy, for a person to carry. It'd be full of whiskey, vinegar, apple cider, applejack, whatever. But again, no maker's mark on this, so that gives you clues, and it also brings about a mystery that we'll talk about here in a minute. So 1830s, because it looks primitive, there's no maker's mark. I've seen ones from the 1850s that have maybe a maker's mark stamped in right about here. They look less primitive, more refined, and more uniform in shape. I have some notes here. So also there's a book, believe it or not. My soon-to-be ex-wife gave me this book, A History of Northeast Ohio Stoneware. This is a very useful book, and it's got information about gorgeous vessels like this. Very useful book, so thank you. This is, again, 3 gallons. This is the drooping. Now let's talk about this design. With this cobalt blue design, this transcends this vessel into not just a primitive antique, but into folk art, because this is called the drooping tulip. You can see our tulip is drooping. I think some of the stems have been erased somehow, or maybe that was, I don't know. But this is that primitive drooping tulip design are number 3, denoting 3 gallons. This helps identify potentially the maker, and it adds the value. So the rule of thumb when it comes to stoneware jugs and jars and crocks is basically the more blue cobalt writing or designs, the more valuable it is. There can be fish, bears, there can be political things, there can be sayings, slogans, mottos, dates, states, and those add the value. This is kind of like, I've seen this on like eBay, like this type vessel called like a Ohio Valley drooping tulip jug, something like that. So these are known out there to collectors. I've never found one of these out in the wild. Most of, if not all, the antiques I feature, all the vintage and antique items I feature on my channel and sell in my eBay store, Vintage Classic Solutions, those are things I find out in the wild, you know, at thrift stores, garage sales, antique malls, you know, you name it. But this was actually like in, you know, a gift from my mom that was, you know, in my house. So this has a special part in my collection, and I'm not gonna get rid of this. It just looks so cool, and you know, in my you know, living room now, it just adds to the room, to the aesthetic, and the it just emotes primitive attributes. So let's talk about the mystery of this. Some of the mystery. But before the mystery, I think we talk about the clay itself. So Ohio has special clay. I'm very proud of our clay here in Ohio. I live in Ohio. My old jug buddy. So Ohio clay is special. You can't just make stoneware of this quality from any old clay found anywhere, okay? Ohio clay has certain attributes that lend itself very well to this kind of vessel. What are those attributes? Well, I have some notes here. It must be able to withstand 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. It also must not crack during the cooling process. It also must be able to take this cobalt decoration, amongst other things. Other clays can be too brittle, or they can crack during cooling, or anything. But this, and Ohio clay, believe it or not, back in the 1800s was advertised as prized Ohio clay. We have vessels made of prized Ohio clay. So there you go. Now that's a good segue into the mystery. So let's talk about the mystery. So amongst collectors of these vessels and jugs, these are not marked. There's no maker's mark. That makes them more fun to collect, in my opinion. You have to do more, you know, more legwork. So there was also a place in Wisconsin called the Milwaukee Stoneware Factory, and they produced stoneware jugs like this from 1848 to 1858 under various ownership. But if you see here in these photos, those jugs look just like this. So what does that mean? Well, there's a few interesting things there to learn about that. So in around 1850, you got to realize that Ohio was already kind of like developed, but the frontier was moving along. So that frontier was now Wisconsin, Milwaukee area. And the older I get, the more I realize what a financial boom that really must have been. That expanding line westward must have been like money everywhere for all kinds of people, artisans, artists, you name it. And this is a result of that. So in Wisconsin, in this factory in Milwaukee, they could not use the local clay because it was too sandy and brittle. So they had to actually import via the Erie Canal through the Great Lakes, Ohio clay to Wisconsin. And it was advertised as prized Ohio clay. Now, they did sometimes import, or not import, but just like transport these ready-made vessels like this. But I have read breakage rates have been between 25 to 40%. So who wants to risk breaking almost half your cargo? It's horrible. So if you ship clay, well, you can't break clay, right? And the artisans would just move along with the expanding line westward. So why did this Ohio Valley from 1830 look just like maybe one from 1850 in Wisconsin? Well, probably because the same artist that made this in Ohio kept moving along with the money, and the clay kept moving along with the money, and they just made these where the people were and where they needed them, and that was happened to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and that line expanding around 1850 or so. So it's fascinating history, and basically it's all about money. They needed, the pioneers and the settlers that were, expanding west. They needed things now. They needed things like this ASAP. So this stuff was made where it was needed, and this was basically like the Tupperware of the time. You can see that salt glaze, the famous attribute, that shiny salt glaze. Sometimes they're heavier and glossier, like a glass. Sometimes they're very porous and matte. This one's a little bit in the middle. Not too glossy, not too matte, somewhere in the middle, the Goldilocks zone, right? You can see all the attributes. I think this is slime, dry slime. I don't think that's actual primitive slime. I think this is modern slime. But it looks kind of cool there, so I'm going to leave it. Anywho, it's got like this orange peel kind of texture, if you can see there. Do some close-ups. Orange peel-like texture. It's really thick. I mean, it's probably that thick throughout. It's heavy duty. This was in our living room as a kid, and this thing got knocked over when me and my brother were jumping around. You know what I mean? It got knocked over, more than once, and it never cracked, and it just feels really sturdy, like a piece of cement. And that base, look at that honest wear. Look at that. That's an honest jug. Let's see. Let's hear it. That D? I don't know. I don't got a perfect pitch. Maybe you do. So this is great. But from my research and looking at auctions, and the fact that this is from Ohio, so because it's confusing, and for collectors, it's like a debate. Like, are these, that Milwaukee Stoneware Factory jugs, or are these made in the Ohio Valley? And since I found this was found in Ohio, I'm assuming this is Ohio Valley, right? And it just looks that much more primitive. So I'm going to date this again with using other comparables online around 1830. This jug, now let's talk about value, right? Before I hit record on this video on eBay, there was an auction that just ended. And they called this jug, it was again that Ohio Valley Drooping Tulip 3-gallon stoneware salt glazed jug. That one sold for, I believe it was $550 plus $50 shipping. So that seller or that buyer paid around probably they probably paid $610 out the door. $610 to get this, that one that looks almost just like this to their house. Shipping this would be a little bit challenging only because of the weight. I buy and sell a lot of jugs like this. I have a specialized, patented method of shipping these things to get them there safely. This one, I don't hear any dead mice inside. These could have been used for vinegar, applejack, apple cider, whiskey, probably whiskey, and they were reused. But a gorgeous vessel. I love this thing. It looks awesome, and I want to get this on the channel. I think I featured this a long time ago when it didn't belong to me. I ran to my parents' house, and I'm like, I gotta show this thing off to my channel a couple of years ago, but now this thing belongs to me. So I kind of did a deep dive into it, and I'm still learning about it. You don't just learn about this in a week or a month. It's a lifetime, but that's about all I learned so far. Whatever please share in the comments. I know a lot of folks specialize in these things specifically. There's websites, that have these, and even fancier cobalt designs, and they show the pricing, the realized prices, and they're not cheap. But they're a gorgeous piece of utilitarian American history, right? How about that? So I hope you've enjoyed this look at this gorgeous old, circa 1830 Ohio Valley salt glazed stoneware 3-gallon jug. My name is EJ Parker, and as always, thanks for watching. See you next time on This Old